Charles Darwin satisfied himself with respect to an explanation for the evolution of complex insect societies by invoking selection on families. Basically, what he said was, if you have a colony, which is a family of individuals, that is more capable of surviving and reproducing than other colonies that have a different set of characteristics, then if those characteristics are heritable, in other words, colonies that are derived from those that have the good characters have those characters, and colonies that are derived from those that have the less desirable characters have those characters, then you will get, over time, an evolution of these social traits through the family level selection. Well, we call that now colony level selection, and we recognize the same basic characteristics, that colonies that have a set of characteristics that make it better able to survive and reproduce than other colonies that have different heritable characteristics, then those characteristics that make the colonies function better will, in fact, evolve over time and increase in frequency from one generation to the next. We engaged in a selection program that demonstrates this particular characteristic. We selected for a single trait the amount of pollen stored in the comb. So this represents a comb pulled from the center of a brood nest of a honeybee colony, and you see the characteristic organization. They tend to put pollen next to the brood, which is in the center, and then you have honey along the outer edges and to the sides. So if you went into a colony, if you went into this one, and you removed a comb somewhere near the middle and pulled it out and took a look at it, it would have an organization that looks something like that. And that's because you can think of the organization of a nest as being concentric hemispheres. In the very center, you have the brood, and then the outer edges surrounding it, you have the pollen stores in a very thin layer, and then you have all the honey is stored in the outsides and to the sides. But of course, this is being done on vertical parallel combs, but it gives you sort of an overall idea of the architecture of the nest. So we selected for the one trait, the amount of pollen stored in the comb, and that is a social trait. The amount of pollen stored in the comb is not a characteristic that any individual has. It's a consequence of the interactions of thousands of individuals inside of a nest doing many different things. It has to do with how much pollen is coming in, how much of the pollen is being consumed by the nurse bees and fed to the larvae. So we went out into the almond orchards around Davis, California, and we examined a whole lot of colonies. So it's 400 colonies. And from those colonies, we pulled every frame, we looked at every frame, and here you can see the phenotype. So this is the colony phenotype that we selected. Right here, this is pollen. We measured the area of pollen on all the combs within colonies, pictured here. And then we took a set of colonies that had lots of pollen stored and a set of colonies that stored much less pollen. We raised queens and we raised males, drones, and we engaged in instrumental insemination. We inseminated the queens that we raised from high storage colonies with drones that we raised from high storage colonies, and queens that we raised from low storage colonies to drones that we raised from low storage colonies. And we selected 2 different strains of honeybees over the years. We did the same thing over and over, year after year. And this shows the results of 11 generations of this selection. And we had 1 to 2 generations per year over the time of this selection program. Altogether, we selected for 23 years, and we had 38 generations. Well, after 11 generations, we had nearly a 16-fold difference between the amount of pollen stored in the comb of what we called our high pollen hoarding strain, or our high strain, compared to the low strain.